Okay, ladies and gents, we're here to read Hatching Magic by and Downer. And chapter 1, here we go. A rabbit hole through time. Like hides under the barn to have kittens. A wyvern mother-to-be likes a nice private spot to lay her eggs. Wicca had inspected several chambers around the castle and rejected them all. This one was unpleasantly hot. That one drafty. This one smelled of mildew. That one was too close to the privies. And yet another was next to the bedchamber of the king's steward, who snored. Wicca sighed. It was all very trying to a wyvern in a delicate predicament. Your turn.
She shifted on her perch on the castle ramparts, doing her best to look inconspicuous. While she enjoyed her afternoon bask in the sun, the courtiers in the garden below were gathered around the lute player by the fountain and seemed to notice the extra gargoyle high overhead.
Wicca flexed her claws and began to give herself a leisurely manicure, cat fashion. She fit in well among the ramparts, being about the size of the stone gargoyle waterspouts. She was a small, four-legged dragon with a neat, slender head and an eagle's beak. No matter what old bestiaries and modern say on the matter, wyverns do have forelimbs as well as head limbs and a set of powerful membranous flapping wings, like those of a bat. Wyverns are the most cat-like of dragons in their agility, intelligence, temperament, and vanity. And like a cat, Wicca has slitted feline eyes, retractable claws, and a deep, melodious purr.
This morning's nest hunting had begun, promisingly hidden behind the tapestry. At the back of the Queen's chapel, Wicca had discovered a small chest full of prayer books, half eaten by bookworms. Their pages would make a fine soft nest, and a little chapel itself was warm, dry, quiet, and unused, the humans having long ago went to mice and rats.
She had been happily planning the lining of the nest. Fresh cobwebs, down from young owls, perhaps a few golden hairs from the princess hairbrush. When the men came in and began to haul out broken furniture.
The old king had recently remarried. His new queen was young, French, and vivant. Some had remembered the neglected chapel. It was to be swept out, given a fresh coat of whitewash, and fumigated. The promising chest was the first thing to go on the bonfire. Waka hid the
Core.
core loft and watched the monks' beautifully carved pews turn into smoke. She would have to start her search all over again.
There was an easier way. Her master, Gideon, was the king's own wizard, and his chambers were warm and dry and quiet. Gideon knew she was about to lay an egg. He had placed a folding screen around her favorite sleeping place, and now gave her a dose of swan liver oil after dinner. It would have been simple to shred a cushion or two, line the heap with a few mouse whiskers and moth wings, and be done with it. But Wicker had her dignity. Nests were not provided. They had to be sought with difficulty, discovered by cleverness, and kept hidden from everyone, especially wizards, even her own wizard.
The sun went behind a cloud, signaling the
Signaling.
the best game time had come to an end. Waka bestirred herself. The egg made her ungainly shift as she struggled to her feet. She was overcome by a powerful urge to dig, to tear something up. She had to make her nest, but where?
She fled, if you with Waddle fleeing, to the back of the garden by the crumbling wall that was all that remained of a much older castle leveled in a long ago siege. She was venting some of her building urges on the ground, clawing out a deep wallow among the melons when she found it.
At first she thought she had to the wall, but it wasn't stone. It wasn't earth either, or fire, or ice, or air, or anything, or any other substance. She knew, except one. Raga sat back on her haunches and snorted in surprise. It felt like magic.
Her master's magic was kept tightly corked in bottles and jars, to be let out only when the moon was waning and the wind was out of the right quarter, and then only in small amounts, ground up in a mortar with barley wine and ashes until it was the right strength for repelling demons or fetching wyverns. But this magic had never known the inside of a jar. It was wild and strong and willful. It yawned suddenly, so that it was bigger than the largest melon, bigger than Wicca. The center of it wavered like summer heat on tiled rooftops, only cool and silver and humming faintly. It pulled at her like the tug of the moon on the sea.
Suddenly, Wicca, Wicca when
Where?
knew where she could
Wood.
would fill her nest. She stretched out her neck slowly until the very tip of her beak broke the surface of the shimmering wildness. And a sound like a heart string being plucked, and in that heartbeat, Wicca was instantly and completely elsewhere. There was nothing in the melon patch but some tangled melon vines and a spot of darkly clawed earth.
When Wicca didn't show up for dinner, Gideon didn't think much of it. It was her habit to dawdle when he called, so that her appearance, when she finally made it, would seem like her own idea. After all, she seemed to say, curling up on the rug before the fire, dogs and other witless creatures came when you whistled. But when it began to grow dark and she still had not returned,
Gideon began to worry. He hoped the silly creature hadn't gotten wedged into a tight spot somewhere down in a
and
in the crypt, or worse, the dungeon. But most of all, he hoped no one had taken her even a fetch wyvern, one summoned by spellcraft, given a golden collar and name. It's still a magical creature. Waka would be powerful weapon against her wizard if she fell into the hands of his enemies.
Someone like Kobold, for instance. Gideon and Kobold had grown up together, and when they turned 16, they had been apprenticed to the king's wizard. Both young men had won favor at court, and when the old wizard had retired to the country to raise bees, both of them vied for the coveted position of the sorcerer royal. In the end, the king awarded Gideon the title and the wand, and Kobold had to hire himself out as an internment wizard, riding a circuit between various third earls and aging warlords. Unfortunately, Kobold had a lot of time left over to nurse his grudge and to sharpen his skills at summoning the minor demons. These he sent to the castle to spy on Gideon. If Wicca was missing, Gideon thought to himself, Kobold would learn about it soon enough, and if he could find a way to wreak his revenge, he would.
Gideon threw on his cloak and went out to look for Wicca. He started by checking all over her favorite hiding places. She wasn't drinking buttermilk in the dairy or napping beside the fire in the laundry, where the
Linens.
linens were hung to dry. She wasn't hunting frogs among the moat or teasing high-strung falcons in their mews. She wasn't taking a dust bath or jousting grounds. He was flying.
What?
He was flying
He
flat.
was lying.
He was lying, trying to get a under the dovecote when he heard a honeyed voice say, "Have you lost something, Gideon?"
He wriggled out from under the dovecote, brushing off feathers and petrified dropping inside the dovecote was Freebreeze, lady in waiting to the queen and one of Kobold's demon spies. She was wearing a gown of blue and silver brocade. Freebreeze was fair of face and would have been beautiful had she not been so unnaturally pale. The pale hair that showed beneath the linen of her dress was closer to white than gold, and her eyes were like clouds reflected in water. The twilight on the silver brocade made her look more eerie still, as though Kobold had fashioned her out of cold moonlight and dust, which he probably had, Gideon thought. I thought I saw a fox slip under the pigeon coop, he said.
She looked up at him and down, like an owl eyeing a mouse. A fox? But why don't you send your wyvern after it? Why begrime yourself when he could save you the trouble? Her voice dripped with sweetness, but she reminded Gideon of the honey the place cook
Callous.
used to cover the taste of meat rotten. That was rotten. He laughed, and Fairy took a startled step backward. Laughter is a powerful charm against demons.
Send a wyvern after a fox? That would raise an awful clamor, and something tells me our new queen wouldn't care to have her evening prayers disrupted in such a noisy fashion. In any case, there was no fox. I merely fancied I saw one, but you can see for yourself. He waved an arm toward the dovecote. Febreze wrinkled her nose. Of course, I take you for your word. I take you at your word, Gideon. She turned and walked away across the courtyard.
Gideon looked after her. He knew he had not deceived her. She would go straight to Kobold. There was no time to lose.
He started back to his rooms. The apparatus required to fetch a wyvern was elaborate and would take one wizard working alone most of the night to set it up. But if he worked steadily, all would be ready by the hour just before dawn, when fetching spells are most effective.
He took a shortcut through the vegetable garden, and it was then that he saw unearthly glimmered coming from the melon patch. Gideon felt his heart sink.
There was no mistaking it.
The talon marks in the earth were Wicca's, and there was no mistaking the hazy ring of oil light, shimmering of humming faintly like a spinning top.
Shimmering and humming faintly like a spinning top. Gideon sat down among the melons with a groan. Wicca had gone through a bolt hole, a kind of magical rabbit hole through time, into some other where, and what's much worse, some other when. He had started to put his hands through the bolt hole when he stopped himself.
It was no use rushing after her. Unprepared, he went back to his chambers and spent an hour putting his crucibles and books away under lock and spell.
Wicca couldn't have chosen a more inconvenient moment to run away. He was supposed to judge the flight trials of the rising class of yearling dragons, settle a long-running dispute between humans and some trolls about mining rights, host a lavish banquet for visiting dignitaries from the dwarves, and preside over the new session of the guild's high court. He hardly had any time at all to pursue his own studies in demon genealogy or perfect the new universal antidote. The last batch of the Sovereign's food tasteless for a week. Gideon now understood why his predecessor had retired to the country to tend bees.
On a high shelf lay coiled a two-headed snake. Beside it,
A two-headed snake.
A two-headed snake and a cool blue flame had burned beside it.
That burned without.
Burned without air or fuel. These were Gideon's familiars. The worm arborers as old as time and igneous and intelligent, biddable fire.
Gideon paused in packing his satchel. He lifted the glass barrel and held out an empty coin purse, making a soft clucking sound. Ignis flowed off the shelf and into the coin purse. Gideon snapped it shut and placed it in his pocket. Then he held out his arm for Oberus. The snake slid along the master's arm, arranging itself in coils underneath the sleeve of Gideon's tunic. There was a small hole in the seam where the sleeve was attached, and from the snake could look out. The wizard's last task was to compose a note to the king explaining his sudden absence. He spoiled 2 sheets of foolscap before he on a likely excuse, a summons to attend the emergency convocation of the Guild of Apps in the wizardly arts. He supposed Kobold would see through it. But by then Gideon hoped he would be in tow in time to off any attempt to overthrow him at Sorcerer Royale. Gideon deftly folded the note into form of a dove, said a few words over it in wizard's Latin, and watched the paper bird wing its way to this castle and into the king's chamber window. He gave the cage of newts their freedom and left out a saucer of buttermilk, just in case Wicca hadn't gone through the boat hole after all. Lock up, he told the newt, and the newt obediently slid to the wizard's shoulder, his satchel, and made his way back to the melon patch.